What the heck is a DD217? Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and recently I've been talking a lot about getting a copy of your DD214 and the difference between a Member 1 and a Member 4 copy of the DD214, and a huge fire back in 1973 that screwed up military records for millions of veterans. And then one of you hit me with an absolute curveball when you asked, what is a DD217? And I gotta be honest, the answer to that question is both simple and it also gets at the root challenge that veterans have when they deal with the federal government. Just to answer the basic question, a DD217 was a document called a Certificate of Service. It was a wallet-sized document that included a service member's name, rank, service number, character of discharge, dates of active service, along with the name of a certifying official and some signatures. More importantly, the DD217 was phased out back in the 1960s. In fact, each service had their own version, so you can see this Air Force version was actually called a DD217AF. The Army canceled their form back in December of 1960, but the other services kept using theirs up until September of 1965. But so what? Well, this is actually an example of the imperfect connection between the Department of Defense and the Department of Veteran Affairs. I mean, on one hand, those two departments are sort of conjoined because they manage the same population. It's just that they manage members of that population at different points in their individual military journeys. But that would make you think that the two departments would be closely linked. Of course, on the other hand, the VA and DOD have radically different missions. The DOD is about delivering a rompin', stompin', butt-kicking to whoever the Congress or President points them at, while the VA is pretty much just about delivering benefits. And since they have such different missions, they go about getting those missions done separately. The story of the DD217 is just one example of that. The Department of Defense determines what forms and documents they need to accomplish their mission, and as they change over time, the VA has to adapt. But the VA also has to keep track of all the old stuff that the Department of Defense really doesn't concern itself with anymore. For example, the VA has a long list of documents which can be used to verify military service. I mean, this is just the start of the list, and there are a lot of documents here which are not and never will be part of a modern service member's life, but they might crop up in the records of older service members. Oh, and before you young bucks think that you've somehow escaped the grinding wheels of bureaucracy, keep this in mind. By the time you are old and gray, the services will have gone rolling along with newfangled forms, and you will simply be left with the latest version of the old forms. Anyways, there is one last document that crops up in these discussions about the DD217, and that is the DD256. This is an actual certificate, the kind of thing you can hang on your wall. It contains even less information than the wallet card, but it prominently declares that the service member was honorably discharged. What's funny about this particular certificate is that it hasn't been canceled by the DOD, but it is controlled. And what's even weirder is that the DOD instruction linked to this certificate doesn't mention the DD256. So maybe it's still floating around, but even if it is, it looks like only the Air Force is concerned with it. One final note of bureaucratic oddity is that there used to be a whole set of these certificates. There used to be a DD259 for a bad conduct discharge, and even a DD260 for a dishonorable discharge. I mean, not exactly the kind of things that you're going to hang up over your desk at work. And those forms were in use up until August of 2003. And congratulations! You have made it to the end of one of the most obscure bureaucratic videos I've ever done. And now might be a really good time to say just how much I appreciate those probing questions like, what is a DD217? And if you have your own questions, fire away.